Our next guest is Alynn Guerra. Alynn is a studio artist and owner of Red Hydrant Press in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Her work spans multiple interests, including GMOs, self-sufficiency, gardening, the environment, politics, climate change, and more recently, motherhood. She's here today to talk about making art and the meaning behind it. Alynn, welcome to Feel Like You Belong.
Thank you.
Yeah, so glad to have you.
Yeah, after trying for so long, huh?
Yeah, well, but persistence is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
So when we were talking earlier, you were telling me a little bit about you originally come from Mexico City. Mm-hmm. How did you find Grand Rapids of all the places in the world to settle?
Well, if you had asked me if I would ever think about migrating to the U.S. or any country, I would have said you're out of your mind. But I was in a relationship back then, and he wanted to move here with his family, and so I followed. And even though we are no longer together, at that point I had spent a big chunk of my life where my life was here, and like the option of going back was like, when I go visit, I don't, like most of the people that I used to know are moved or people have changed. I don't recognize them or they don't recognize me. So yeah, what was the question?
and you really, but you create, I mean, whenever we get transplanted, we do, after a little watering, a little sun, we start putting down roots.
And it's crazy. I mean, when you look back, you're like, I have spent more, or if not half of my life in this place where it's not just the people that you know, it's even the familiar faces at the coffee shop or the store, all that start making the fabric of your everyday life. When you go back home, those people are no longer there, and everyone's strangers, and it's just hard. You don't like, yeah, it's like you belong there, but you don't belong there in that fabric. It's just like.
And we develop relationships with people and maybe with businesses, but not with trees and hills and buildings.
Right, exactly.
So
yeah. So it's still the longing for that place, and I still go there, and it brightens my whole being to just be there. But then, if I want to go out, there's nobody to go out with. My family, some friends, it's so hard to like get together with my friends because they have different lifestyles than I do. So it's just harder, and I end up spending a lot of time with either just by myself or just with my sister, which I go visit. But yeah, it's not the same here. You just walk anywhere and you find a familiar place, a familiar person, and it's that's what make the difference of like feels like you belong to both places, but you also belong to none of them, because I'm not from this place, but this is this is how I feel more at home.
And people get to know you. People get to know your dog when you're out walking.
My dog, my daughter,
yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So you begin to get attachments.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about your artwork, because your current work is in printmaking, but that wasn't always your dream.
Well, when you're young, the only options that you have are the options that are given to you, right? Then you walk a little further, and then the horizon just changes, and then keeps changing the further you walk. So the few options that I had when I was about to go to college was I could pursue an artistic view, which they tell you if you become an artist, you're gonna starve. So you do something that's like artistic, so graphic design was a choice.
It's more practical.
Right. Or I was gonna go for like science, and that I was like between those two, and then just like I'm just gonna go for art, and then I got accepted at the public university, and halfway through I realized I just didn't like it. I didn't like the constrainings of it, Mm-hmm. And I don't know. It sounds like I don't know what. the word. It's like, oh, so she just wants everything to go her way, and she doesn't like to be constrained. So she's like, oh, I don't like this anymore. It was more like I recognized that my soul wasn't on it. It was on creating, but not on creating to be selling stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And just in any other work, like if your soul is compromised, then you can keep on going because there's good money,
Mm-hmm.
or you choose not to do it and maybe do what you feel like where your heart is, and maybe there's not going to be money for a while, but if
So
you
now
don't care about it, then you'll be happy. I mean,
did you go back to school, or in your printmaking work, are you really
no,
self-taught?
what I did is, so I basically dropped out of school, and my college had another campus somewhere else, which sounds like the dream place to be, and it was. It was in the mountains of Guerrero, and I went there, and I studied art, and it was far from my friends, my family, and my past lives, so I just could be wherever I wanted, and I did, and I started, like, I thought I wanted to be a painter, but that didn't work out, and then out of options, I ended up in the printmaking shop, and I liked it a lot.
What grabbed
but
you
it's-
about printmaking?
I think I always liked it, but I always felt like I was challenged for it, you know? It's a different medium of expression, like there's no color, you know? You have to lie a lot because it's so graphic, so bold. I would look at the German expressionist art, and I just loved it. And I was like, there's no way I could ever think that way, because it's almost like learning how to write, you know? You have to learn the language of black and white and high contrast. And just like a language, I learned it, and I think I was good at it. But there's, so just as I said before, I was good at the technique, but I had nothing to say.
And visiting your website, you actually speak to that precise point,
Yeah.
because there are technical skills, there are things you learn to manipulate, but ultimately, if there's no content behind
yeah.
it, it's just empty.
And that's one thing they don't tell you at art school or any school. You're gonna suck at it for a long time because you have only lived these many years. You don't have much to say because you haven't lived. You haven't had any
Nothing
experiences.
against young people, but
Exactly, and it's okay. Just polish your technique and get out there and try to like leave, have experiences.
let life beat you up.
Exactly, and then keep your eyes open and your mind open, because that's what, like, it's not like the inspiration muse that comes and visit you. It's your experiences that guide you, and you're like, oh. Sometimes just on a walk, you're like, oh, I never thought about this before. Oh my God, that just happened. Inspired something that might not look like your artwork, but I feel like once and I talk about this in my website. So I moved here. I was making prints in my basement, and I was struggling with with not having anything to say. But I was still making stuff. And like, yeah, it looks alright, but there's nothing that makes me talk about it. I'm not passionate about it. And it was gardening that did it, and not gardening per se. I mean, yeah, it's beautiful to see a seed coming into a plant and then feed you. But it was it was the rage about knowing of the politics of the food companies, the seed companies, the agribusiness, and how they want to control everything. I was like, no, this can't be true. How is it that nobody knows about this? And like at that moment, I felt like my future. I didn't have a kid before. I think I would have been even more enriched if I had a kid. That I felt like our future as a human race is in jeopardy. How is it that nobody knows?
You were developing a message then.
Right. No. Well, I was very upset. I was like, oh, they keep us in the shadows. So we don't. So anyway, I made it my mission to talk about this. And it
So
wasn't
how
like,
does, for your conversation about the environment, about GMOs, about sustainability, about gardening, how does that manifest itself in your work?
well, at first when I was younger, it was very like aggressive, you know. And some people told me, "Oh, your artwork is so like um, angry." I'm like, "Yeah."
Well, I am
It's
angry,
like,
doggone it.
well, if when when you do something more uplifting, I probably buy something from you because I really like it. I was like, "Oh, I don't need the money." So I was like that, right?
Mhm.
And then I felt like as I became older, as I aged, I became wiser, and then I realized that there's even a more powerful way to influence, and it doesn't have to be angry, it doesn't have to be in your face. Sometimes beauty with a message can strike people in ways that they don't even know. Like sometimes, I don't know how I feel about this, but sometimes I talk to people that I know don't agree with my points of view, but they buy the artwork because they really like it. Like when they find about it, they're probably not gonna like it, but oh well. But it's just like if you see something that doesn't attract you, you would probably not get closer to it. If you see something that you're like, oh my god, I'm curious about it, it's pretty, let me walk 2 steps towards it. And then they look at it, and then they want to know more, and then they come to you, and they say, hey, tell me more about this. Then you opened a path of communication, and maybe he or she won't agree with me,
Mhm.
but then that message is going to be there, and maybe one day they're going to want to know more about it, which has happened.
You've planted a seed.
Exactly. And one thing that it really happened is when was it, in 2006, I think, we did something about corn because the tariffs were going to be lifted, and it was just, it's a long story, but it was very political, and some people really don't they don't think that that's important or whatever. So a person came and confronted me and it's like, well, I want to know more about this, I don't think it's important or whatever. And I said, well, let's talk about it, and we did. And then maybe 2 years later, it's like, oh, you know what, I went and looked for it, and oh my god, it was eye-opening. It's like, you are not going to change the world, but one person at a time sometimes, I don't know, gets the message along. And it's not the same if you pass along a pamphlet, people may choose not to take it,
Correct.
you know? And it's going to take them, I don't know, 15 minutes to read it. But they come and look at your artwork and they want to know more. You can be talking to them for
You've drawn
an
them
hour,
in.
you
You've
know?
drawn them in.
Yeah.
I want to, because we're going to have to wrap up shortly, I want to give our viewers a sense for if they were to visit your studio there at Tanglefoot Building, what would they see?
Well, it's a warehouse. So the thing is, people walk through the first door and they was like, oh yeah. And then they walk up and I open the doors and it's all red inside, and there's all my work is there. I have 2 presses. It's really big. I mean, I'm fortunate to have that space.
Is printmaking messy?
It is. It's both messy and very clean. The artwork in itself, it has to be pristine. There no
No
smudges,
smudges,
no ink just spreads like disease everywhere. But the artwork in itself has to be clean. So,
And so if people wanted to find your website, how would they find that?
well, you go to redhydrantpress.com, or you can just Google Mexican printmaker in Grand Rapids, and it's going to come up.
And there you are.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Quick last question to wrap up. What has motherhood taught you these last couple of years, and how has that influenced your work?
Well, it has taught me to be more patient, and I feel like I am I have more patience with people, you know, not just my kid. I feel like I'm wiser, and I'm willing to listen to other people's opinions, which before I think I was more intolerant. So it has taught me to be way more tolerant. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, good for Flora for having
Yeah.
gifted this to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The time has flown by, but I really want to thank you for coming and
Thank you.
sharing your story with us. This has
Yeah.
been great.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you for joining us. If you're watching on TV, stay tuned for our following segments on information and humor. If you're watching us on the internet, I hope you will check out our other conversations with the impressive immigrants who make these United States a more vibrant place.